The Democratic Party vice presidential nominee, that's Kamala Harris, taking a swipe at Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. That was in the first and only vice presidential debate taking place in the US just a few hours ago, in fact. And Vice President Mike Pence echoing Trump's sentiments, also blaming China for the spread of the coronavirus around the world. And in fact, we continue with our analysis on the first and only vice presidential debate unfolding in the US. Our guests in studio who have been with us since the middle of the night, essentially. Let's begin with you, Daniel Eloff. Lance Claasen is to my right, and Hermann Pretorius sitting in the middle there. Gentlemen, I think maybe a good place to start is it was a 90-minute debate. There was the usual criticism now about whether any strategy emerged, any real policy was discussed in any real depth. Hermann, did anything change in the course of those 90 minutes for the average American voter?
I don't necessarily think so. I think vice presidential debates are a bit like salt. You realize when they're not there.
Yeah.
And what Lance was saying just before we came on air now was that Pence managed to bring some stability to the Trump campaign, and I think that's absolutely right. Last week's the presidential debate was chaotic. I don't think it reflected well on Trump. And there's a weird parallel between this vice presidential debate and the 2012 vice presidential debate, where in the first debate Mitt Romney outperformed expectations and Barack Obama did not have a good debate, and then it was up to Joe Biden to stabilize the campaign ship. So I think Mike Pence did that. So this is the problem with these kind of debates, is both can meet their objectives without those objectives necessarily clashing.
I mean, I feel cheated if, on behalf of the American people, Lance, in a way, because, you know, we heard the same numbers. For example, if we take a look at the COVID crisis around the world and specifically in the US, which is leading with infections and deaths. We heard the same numbers repeated, nothing new, nothing substantive, certainly nothing that might swing me if I were part of that 10% of a swing vote.
So what they've done is they've stabilized the ship. They didn't damage what they've done. And I don't think the aim was not necessarily to get new voters. I think the aim was just to keep their voters that they've got. And if they get new voters, fine. But that's what their aim is. Their aim is first to protect what they've got, to galvanize their bases, to say that we're going in the same direction. That's the first prize. The second prize is to convince voters. And the number of voters that have yet to be convinced, I mean, it's very small. There's more risk of voters not pitching up than convincing the other side's voters. That's the real issue. If your voters don't pitch up, that's one vote that you lose. If the opposition voter switches to your side, that's two votes that you win, because you take one away and you get one for yourself. So it's a two-vote swing. And there's very, very little room for that. The real issue is get your voters to pitch up. Did it help their voters to pitch up that normally pitch up? Yeah, it didn't distract them, as opposed to what Trump did last week. So to keep people in line, yes, it's helped the Republicans more than it's helped the Democrats, because the Democrats weren't going to go anywhere. They weren't losing anything. Yeah. The real problem it's for Trump. It's Trump supporters. It's not even the Republican supporters. It's Trump supporters. Yeah. There is a difference there.
Absolutely.
There's a difference.
I mean, Daniel, in terms of polling, for example, we just spoke to our reporter in Washington, Carolyn Prosuti, and she's already talking to us about polling definitely swinging in favor of Kamala Harris at 58%. I think she said 38% for Mike Pence. Is that an accurate reflection, do you think?
I think perhaps of the perception of a lot of people, I think we also need to keep in mind which polling company was used, obviously. I would say, and I agree with what Lance said earlier during the broadcast, that it was close to a 50-50. I do believe, because I place a lot of emphasis on the first 15 to 30 minutes of the debate, that Harris might have pipped this debate, just because she really came in guns blazing with the debate when it started. So I think that tips it in her favor, in my view. But I think Pence stabilized everything. Like Lance said, he made sure the battle lines were drawn, and I think it was extremely necessary. These vice presidential debates are extremely important, usually for the candidates to come and say, well, this is our policy and this is how I'm going to support the presidential candidate to achieve this. But it was even more important during this debate because with the last presidential debate, we didn't really hear any policy. It wasn't a discussion.
Anything.
We didn't hear anything. It was a loud shouting by a bunch of old guys. That was it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was so important for this debate to really draw the lines and say, well, this is what this campaign is going to be about. This is what the next 27 days will be about.
So, gentlemen, just before we let you go, I want you to give me your win and your winner and your loser, moments that were winning moments and a moment that was a losing moment. And I'll start, in fact. I'm going to go with the race issue. The race question, for me, was a win for Kamala Harris and how she really honed in on the brutal killing of Breonna Taylor. Mike Pence, in his response to the race question, chose to talk about the fact that rioting and looting was not the answer to dealing with the race issue, and then he sort of went over to talk about something completely different. So, Lance, beginning with you, your winning and losing moment.
I think the winning moment for Kamala Harris was a closing, talking about bringing the country together. I think it was really strong. It was really earnest. It was like it didn't seem false or rehearsed. It seemed like it was genuine, and I think that she connected with voters that way. I think the winning moment, her losing moment, and the winning moment for Pence was when Pence pinned her on. Are you going to bring two Supreme Court justices on? Are you going to change the nature? And the fact that she refused to answer.
Yeah.
He actually took over the moderating role on that, and that's why she didn't do that, and the moderator didn't do herself justice as well. This is a lesson for the moderators. You have to hold these guys accountable.
Though, isn't it? It's such a tough setting to moderate.
The fact is, the follow-up question is always better. She just let them roll over, and she refused to hold them to account.
Yeah.
The moderating is a thankless task. I think that it's just something that I wouldn't take any money in the world.
No, you couldn't pay me enough money.
No. Especially this election cycle. Losing moment, I might seem terribly gimmicky here, but optics matter. The fact that the fly is dominating the discussion, that's so unfortunate for Mike Pence. But the memorable footage from the debate will be him with an insect on his head. So I think that's a losing moment. Winning moment, I have to agree with Lance. I think there where he actually engaged and not just kind of side talked. And then I have to agree with you that it's classic. Weak whataboutism.
Absolutely.
To say Breonna Taylor death, but riots. No. Those issues might be connected. But if you want to show some insight and empathy, you don't do that. I think he fumbled.
Yeah, there's no talking about a brutal death and then saying, but.
And because it was obviously one of the points that the Republicans are weak on. It's something they need to address. And what I took away from that, I agree with both of you. I think that was the really hard blow for Pence. But as someone that debates and prepares people to debate, I would have thought that he was prepared not only in the content. I mean, you can see he was prepared to answer the question, but he wasn't prepared on how to answer the question, and that was, I think, really striking.
The tone.
Yes, he like you mentioned it earlier. He mumbled when he was answering, and it really it didn't reflect well, I think, on Pence.
Strangely enough, just to jump in, it's that if you look at Pence's political history, he started out as a Democrat. And he was inspired by John F. Kennedy and the Civil Rights Movement. He didn't reference that once. It's not in any debate, on any platform, he's never referenced that. This is what has initiated my advent into politics. I might have changed political party, but this isn't a journey.
Absolutely.
So it's like a mystery, he keeps it off the table. And so what it does is an area that he could use, and he just doesn't.
Yeah. But I think that's because of the base of Donald Trump. I think he realizes what the base is that he's trying to, just keep happy.
Gentlemen, it's been a real treat having all three of you in studio with me this morning, keeping me company, and also giving us a real sense not only of the debate itself, but the history in American that context that we so desperately need when we're unpacking such a complicated story. So to all of you, thank you so much for coming in so early and keeping us company. That is Daniel Eloff, Hermann Pretorius is in the middle, and Lance Claasen joining us in studio here on the AM Report.